Hey guys, how's it going? Now I'm somebody who's been obsessed with social dynamics for the past 8 years. Over the course of me doing this, I've put in well into 10,000 hours of approaching strangers and talking to strangers. And I've come to a lot of different strategies to put myself into their head, to understand what they're thinking. Now, first and foremost, to understand and to get in somebody's head, you have to understand how a personality works. You have to understand how people variate from yourself. Now, you are a unique entity, and there's a lot of different people with a lot of different beliefs, thoughts, with a lot of different traumas, and you have to understand where they come from. You have to understand this kind of headspace. Now, to understand this place, you have to be able to put yourself in their shoes. So in this beginning part, what we're gonna be talking about is the little personality quirks and the little things that make each individual unique. Now, the first thing that I look at is their Myers-Briggs. Now, oftentimes nowadays, I actually do legitimately ask somebody what their Myers-Briggs is because it does help me understand where they're coming from. Now, for me, I'm an ENTP, which means that I'm a scientist that gets obsessed with things, that is also very charismatic in leading people. I'm one of those basically my personality type is somebody that's very nerdy. I'm a very nerdy, loud guy. So ENTP, that's me. Now there's a lot of different spectrums along this line. So the E means that I get energy from talking to people. I also let the lower end of the scale for extroverts. So I do also gain energy by being by myself. Not everything is black or white. Even though you might be one letter, you still have aspects of the other letter, oftentimes. Maybe less so depending on where you're at. So like an ENTJ would be somebody that's less introverted than I would be. He'd be a lot more louder and a lot more demanding and commanding. He'd be even more of like a leader, Attila the Hun type. Now, the second letter would be the intuitive and the sensing. Now, intuitive is basically where so I'm intuitive. I can create concepts in my head and I have a very good imagination, as opposed to somebody who's a sensor. A sensor has skill sets that are different than mine. A sensor is in the real world. So whereas somebody'd be talking to me and I'd be more likely to, start thinking about random stuff, or maybe I wouldn't be as good at interacting with the real world. A sensor is somebody that is very good at interacting with the real world and is very good at being present in the present moment. So that's the difference between an intuitive and a sensor. Now the next one is thinking and feeling. Now thinking and feeling. Now me, I'm a thinker. I think things through. So what happens, generally speaking, is that anytime anything happens to you, it goes straight through the amygdala. Basically your fight or flight, your animal side. And then what I do is that I put it then through my prefrontal cortex and I try to break it down, think what this means. Now, not everybody does this. Some people act on feelings. They act on the emotion over acting on the thought. Now, this might sound to you guys like they're unintelligent. This is not the case. This person has a different type of intelligence than I would. He puts his mental capacities into a different place. So with people that are more feelers, they're better at reading social cues. They're better at interacting with the real world, being empathetic, as opposed to me, where I'd be more likely to be obsessed with a concept, like this one that you guys are listening to on this video. Now, the next one after this would be perceiving and judging. Now me, I'm a perceiver. I can see two sides to a situation. So let's say there's a homeless guy on the ground. Now, when I see this guy, in my head, the first thing that I think is this guy probably was put here by circumstances that are kind of sucky. Now, the second thing I think is there's also the possibility that this guy is also putting himself here. So I'm like, I can see both sides. Now, a judger would be like, he's either fucking up or he needs help. So this is what the judger does. The judger makes decisions and he feels very uncomfortable with ambiguity. I don't. I live in ambiguity. So a judger type would be somebody that's more certain. So they come across more charismatic and maybe not necessarily charismatic, but it does play a big factor in the other three letters. The other three letters, basically the J and the P, interact with the other three letters, which this is a very advanced Myers-Briggs concept. The idea is that the judging, the perceiving interact with the N, the F, the T, that basically whatever depending the other three previous were, that's how this is going to play out. So an ENTJ, they're going to be more this is how it is. They're going to be like that, Tom Cruise type, where Tom Cruise is 100% certain everything. So he's a lot more of a charismatic leader. As opposed to me, I can come across as a charismatic leader, but I'm also at times, I can see both sides of things, so it can make me look uncertain and a little bit weaker. But because I'm like this, I also get more in touch with reality. I can be like, okay, so what are the chances of both being right? And I can be like, okay, cool, well, this is most likely right, but there's a 10% chance of this still being right. I can see better in gray zones than somebody that's a judge or can't. Now, somebody that's a sensor, or somebody that's very strong in their sensing, that leads with their sensing, where they lead with what they see in the world, gets very frustrated with somebody that's like me, where I'm also very high in intuitiveness and imagination. I have a very good, I can run concepts in my head, but it makes me look airy to somebody that's like that. It makes me look stupid. As opposed to like on the other side of things, that person looks stupid to me. So like the way that you view the world, based on this is how you can help yourself view and understand somebody else. Now, does somebody have a victim mentality? Now, if somebody has a victim mentality, usually they're a lot more one-dimensional because they're going to be more likely to be supplicating, qualificating. They're going to be trying to put a certain image of who they are in your head. And they're also, they don't take as much, they want to blame circumstances on things outside of themselves. So whenever these kind of people come about, usually they're a lot more angry, they're a lot more depressed, anxious. If they see that you have something that they want, they're going to be a lot more likely to try to manipulate you for it. They're going to be trying to take it from you. So like look out for people with like heavy victim mentalities. Now, a victim mentality essentially is like I'm broke and poor because such and such thing happened so many years ago. Instead of being like, what do I focus on? What can I focus on that's going to get me to the next place? What can I focus on that I have control over? Instead of focusing on things that I don't have control over. There's a difference between a victim mentality and an internal locus of control. Now, there is sociopathy out there. Oftentimes I preach about empathy, and I'll say this, like because of the victim mentality, people with empathy will start coming across a little more sociopathic because they have the kick dog mentality. They think that the world's going to bite them, so they try to bite it back before it does that to them. But really, it's an extension of just like a hurt empath. Somebody that's like this is usually just a hurt empath and doesn't understand that there's people out there, unlike himself, who are very caring about each other. Now, this is where it comes from. Like a lot of us are egocentric. We think that everybody else must think like us. We think that everybody else must be the same person, that they must be after the same goals. This is not the case. Everybody has their own goals. They have their own things they're chasing in life, their own things that they want. Like if you guys look in the MyersBriggs, you guys look at different types of people. Like an ENFP wants to bring people together. He wants to like raise the world up and he wants to like save people. As opposed to me, my type wants to break down concepts and get to a closer version of reality. And I get off on talking about concepts and like things like this on camera. Like I love this. Or maybe an ENTJ type who wants to just conquer the world, wants to like get as much money as possible, wants to acquire wealth, women or bitches, things like that. Like that's an ENTJ type. Now back to the topic at hand, sociopathy. Now sociopathy is very rare. It's 1% of the population. However, sociopath essentially, they don't feel emotions. Now the way that you can tell if somebody's a sociopath is that at first they're going to be very charismatic, but they're going to seem slightly off. Now, oftentimes salesmen take on sociopathic roles. They're very sociopathic. Like people with sociopathy are very good at these kind of jobs because they can fake it really well, but there will be a touch of an off feeling whenever they try to express an emotion or empathy. Now, this kind of off thing is them trying to fake an emotion to get a certain outcome and result. Now, if you feel this kind of off feeling, there's a chance they could be a sociopath. Now, if that's the case, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means they can't empathize with you, and they're probably more likely to be goal-driven. What do they want? All right, now in general, people want love from their tribe. They want to have their place in society secure. So everything everybody does, to some extent, is them trying to get love from the tribe. Now, this is where we're going to get into lock-in. Now, lock-in is what your brain has identified as you getting love from your tribe. Now, it could be anything from cooking, from being social, to getting a girlfriend. It could be something as simple as making a lot of money, something your brain gets locked into and you actually have fun doing it. So something you like, even video games have a form of lock into them. Like people feel the lock-in, and somewhere along the lines, you told your brain that this is something that you're going to get value from, and now because you're going to get value from it, now your brain's like focuses the fuck in, because now it thinks you're going to get love from the tribe. It's going to give you all its resources to get really good at this. Now, in the same way, like I decided to get really good with people, because my dad was so great with people. And now because of that, my brain literally just absorbs everything around social dynamics. I hear it once and it's instantly in my head. Now in the same way, everybody has their own version of lock-in. What is the person that you're talking to? What's his form of lock-in? What's her form of lock-in? What do they get obsessed with? Now, with the sociopathy, what is that guy trying to get out of you? Because with a sociopath, oftentimes they're not as empathetic as somebody like us. So if they're talking to you and you are the form of their attention, there's something they want. Now, this is going to take us to reticular activation system. Your brain measures and weighs two different things to decide if you should focus on it. It's going to weigh value and it's going to weigh threat. Now, if you're talking in a room and let's say like there's a bunch of your coworkers and whatnot and the manager's there, the manager can fire you and the manager can also promote you. So that person has both threat and value, and conglomerated, this person has in the room probably the most amount of value and threats. So your RAS is like boom on that person. You're focusing on them. Unless you're daydreaming and you're thinking somehow your brain thinks that something in your head is like more valuable, Like I would. That's something that I would do. Like I'd come to a concept, be like, oh shit, that's interesting. And then something that's a sensor would be like, oh, this guy's a dumbass. Now the next thing you want to look at is the person's perceived click. Now there's a lot of subcultures in American culture and the world culture as a whole. Like mine is like, you know, pickup artist community, entrepreneur community, like these kind of people I very identify with. So with me, I have a lot of the same ideals as people in that culture, in that clique, because we are built like sponges. We're built to sponge up the culture around us and become the things that are around us. So I hang around a lot of pickup artist guys. I hang around like guys that are in entrepreneurship. So I'm constantly just absorbing it and becoming those people. Now, the same way, you can try to figure out what kind of clique somebody's in. And by knowing their clique, you can kind of have an idea of what their values are. You can understand what they want out of life. Now, who has more value in the conversation? You or the other person? Or are you guys about the same level? Now, this is a tough one. If you're higher value than the other person, or if you have more worth than the other person, there's got to be a slight qualification to supplication, like, well, how do I put this? Like, basically one person's going to be qualifying more to the other way around. Now, you have to figure out who's going to be doing this more to the other person. If somebody is over the top, like qualifying and supplicating to you, they want something from you. It could be as simple as like you validating who they are so they feel more confident about themselves. So sometimes people will be looking for validation and more like reinforcement that they are this really fucking cool person in society so they can have more confidence. That's a possibility as well. Maybe you're just an attractive person and that person like wants, you know, the validation of being around you. Maybe you have a business they really desire, or maybe they're just an empathetically caring human being. Now, this is one of my favorite types of people, and they're also a lot more rare. I love hanging around people that are empathetic and caring. The problem is, though, is that they have to be able to be free of outcome with you. They have to have their own, again, internal locus of control, where, like, despite you being there or not, they're still going to be okay with themselves, which these people, again, are pretty high up on the level chain, which we'll get into this in a second. Basically, they're pretty high, like, level-wise. Basically, they've gone through a lot of, they were either born, like, very just, like, blessed with the ability to be free of outcome and to be a positive, caring person, or they work through the chain of like struggle to get to the top eventually and to let go. Now that you guys have some basic understanding of how personalities work and how people in general work, let's get into the nitty gritty. Now, the first part that we're gonna get into is what I call Groundhog Day. Now, this is something that a lot of people that game a lot and people that also do sales understand intuitively, even people that are maybe in retail, people that have to do the same situation with clients, people in general, repeatedly over and over and over, the same situations. Now, this is what I call Groundhog Day. You get the same conversations, the same questions, repeatedly every single time. Now, if you're somebody like me who goes out and approaches women, you hear the same questions, the same conversations so repeatedly, you know like the reasoning why they're saying it. You know what they're getting at. You also maybe have things to say back. Maybe you have like a plethora of things that you can say back to a single line because you heard it so many times previously. Now, this is Groundhog Day. Now, because I have seen it so many times and I've seen like maybe somebody say something and then follow up with a certain action or a certain way of being, now I kind of have an idea of why somebody's saying this. So the second I hear, oh, blah, 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 I know what they mean. Now, for example, when somebody is saying something along the lines of, if only your place was closer, then we'd totally be doing something right now. We'd probably totally be messing around with each other. Now, because she's saying this, she wants to have sex with me, but she doesn't have anywhere close by. So I know that I have to make it done, like get it done right there and then. Like she's subtly telling me this, so I can tell what she's thinking based on what I've known from the past. The next part is going to be body language, reading body language. Now, there's a lot of things that I see that people get wrong constantly about body language, and there's also a lot of things that you can read off a person on body language. Now, first and foremost, seeing one of these signs, like by itself, does not mean that that person is necessarily feeling a certain way. You want to read the overall body. Now, for example, if I'm covering my mouth, covering the mouth is basically means that I'm expressing a character that I don't feel congruent to, or that I'm lying. Now, if I'm also doing this and I'm smiling, it could mean like a couple of things. It can mean like maybe I'm feeling coy, and maybe I'm holding in a secret. Maybe I'm holding in a surprise. Maybe I think that you're cute, and I don't want to say it. So I'm trying to like stay undercover. Maybe it's duper's delight. So maybe I'm smiling because I'm lying and I'm feeling a little bit of a high hit from that. I'm feeling my ego's getting boosted. So like there's a lot of things you want to read. Now, so when you do this, you want to look at the overall context of the conversation, who this person is in general. You also want to look at basically the things that we talked about previously, Groundhog Day, things like that. It's all put together. It's a myriad of different things. Now, this takes a lot of practice because you have to go through a lot of situations and you have to go through a lot of social situations to be able to read this really clearly. Like I said, this took me a lot of years to perfect and get really good at. So if you guys aren't able to do this at first, take your time. Now, I have a lot of clients where the girl won't be saying anything and they get in their head about it. They're like, oh, the girl doesn't like me. Now, oftentimes, that could be a reason that the girl's trying to get rid of you, but it could also be the fact that she's feeling really shy around you and she doesn't know what to say. Maybe she's not as clever verbally as you are. So you want to take the pressure off of her, keep talking. This is a thing that people constantly get wrong about people being quiet. Oh, this person's being standoffish. Sometimes people just don't like talking. They're more introverted. Sometimes they're more observant and they like to kind of watch things happen around them. You don't know what them being quiet even means. Your RAS is going to focus on things of value and threat. So oftentimes if I'm in an interaction with a girl and I see her eyes go like this, she was looking at something that she found more valuable than what I was saying. Maybe her foot is like maybe lining this way and she looks in that direction. She's thinking about going. She thinks that she's like, oh, I got to go in this direction. And this is honestly taking a little bit of time. I see this and I'm like, hey, when I walk you up the way, let me walk you in the direction you're going. And then from here, like I look like a socially intelligent human being. Now, confidence can be very situational, but generally the way that you want to read confidence is one, a lack of a barrier to the outside world, so authentic emotions, and two, relaxation in the body. Now, a lot of people are always talking about putting your shoulders back like this, sticking your head up, putting your chin up, which these are good indications that somebody's confident, but an even better indication is relaxation. Relaxation, a lack of tension in the voice, and relaxation in the overall body. Now, if you see this, a person's more likely to be authentic with you and real because they have no reason to lie to you or say anything other than what they're feeling. Now, this is a really cool little idea. If you see somebody really tensed up and maybe they're building rapport too much in their tonality, oftentimes, so, hey, oh my God, that's so interesting. Oh, that's so cool. This person needs something from you, and I would be a little bit more wary of that in general. Now, is the person qualifying or supplicating to you? Are they trying to skew your image of how you view them or something else? Now, I pay a lot of attention to this. So basically the person will say something along the lines of maybe they try to sneak in how much money they make. Maybe they try to show off their watch very naturally. Maybe they try to tell me about all the women they slept with. Maybe they try to drop in there, oh, hey, I cook. Maybe this is a girl that's trying to say, oh yeah, I love cooking. She's trying to tell me that she's a good girlfriend. I look for all these different things. This is very tough to for me to express, and I'm not a body language expert necessarily. There's a lot of books you guys can read. I read a lot of stuff about the FBI. I read a lot of sales books around the subject. And you also want to look for tension in the face. Now, if you see it in the eyes or you see somebody laugh. So the one thing that I always call girls on, which I could do a little less of, but is it's not authentic. You don't see in the eyes, now see, when I do it like that though, you can see it. Now, I'm looking in the camera just so I can see that I'm doing this right. But you want to look for that they're smiling in the eyes. Now, the eyes can again, they go a value or threat. Read the facial expressions of them. So if I'm ever with a client, this bugs my clients to no end, and they eventually catch on that I'm doing this. Anytime that we're talking obviously we're in a club or something like that, and I see them go like this, I know they just looked at some girl's butt. And the second they do that, I go approach her. So then they stop looking around like that, and they usually start focusing on me. If you guys ever come on a boot camp with me or do something like that, pre-warning, okay? I'm gonna make you approach everything you check out. Okay, now the next one is what I call leveling. Now, leveling is basically the idea that you've been at where that person was before. Now, as we said in the first part of reading personalities, people get to a certain level of letting go of the outside world, of trying to hold on to everything. So if you're hanging out with me and whatnot, I'm a person that doesn't have the feeling to really manipulate you too much because I'm very take it or leave it. If we're friends, cool. If we click, cool. If we don't, it's cool. If I'm talking to a girl that's really cute, it'd be cool if we clicked. It'd be cool if something happened. If it doesn't, again, it's cool. So because of this, I don't feel the need to control the world so heavily. It's also a big factor, a big factor of leveling too, is that I don't feel a lot of negative emotions, not as much as I used to. I still feel stress. I still feel self-doubt. I still beat myself up a lot on occasion. I still feel anger, but I don't feel it as much as I used to. And eventually I'm going to probably get to the point where it's very, very low. And then when it gets like this, I'll be a lot more positive, upbeat, and I'll draw a lot more people to me, and I'll be more charismatic in general. Now, another interesting subject around this is the the world is very quiet to me because I've gone through so many stressors, like where something would happen and everybody else would freak out. The world for me is very quiet. When I get rejected, it's not a big deal. I don't really care. When things like bad situations happen, like let's say there was a gunshot or something like that, I wouldn't be as quick to like maybe freak out as somebody else would. Mainly just because I've been through a lot of bullshit and I've forced myself through a lot of uncomfortable situations. Now, all these come into leveling. There's other factors come into this too, but understand that as you grow as a person and you push yourself through self-development, you're gonna start leveling. You're gonna look at yourself maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road and be like, I barely even recognize that guy. However, you'll come to somebody that will actually be somewhere where you were before, and now because you're where they used to be, you can understand them. This is what I call leveling. It's basically like an idea in like poker. Like if as you keep growing and keep building on yourself and keep getting better in self-development, eventually like there's not going to be too many people above you, and so you can read people below you on this and you can understand what their level is, and you use this as a factor in understanding people as well. So when you talk to somebody in a conversation and you say something, you can understand, reading the body language and everything we talked about previous, what they're thinking about. Now the next one is emotional contagion. Now this one is actually something that I've talked about with other pickup guys in the past, and I've worked on and perfected myself. It's basically like the ability to cold read somebody. It's basically the idea that you can look at somebody's face, and based on what is called emotional contagion, you can look at them, get very meditative, and then look at their face, and the first thing you feel off of them, you can feel that emotion almost. So if they're feeling like maybe slightly angry, maybe they're feeling a little bit stressed out, you can instantly feel it off them because emotions are contagious. And then you're like, okay, so this is how this person's feeling. It's kind of a little bit of a trick. So if somebody, if their facial expressions just from you like logically looking at it doesn't work and you can't feel what they're feeling, this is a really good trick to do. Just look them at the face, and the first emotion you feel off them is oftentimes the emotion they're feeling. So from here, you can work with that. Now, I've given you guys a lot of different things. Now, this is a very complex subject and it's really tough to master at first. I've been doing cold approach pickup for a very long time and obsessively. If you guys want to get truly good at this reading people's minds, I'm pretty proficient by this point, but it takes a long time and a lot of practice. If you guys want to get better at this, look at everything that I just posted before and start practicing this. And you have to have a lot of reference points. You can't just like pull this straight out of the gate, sit inside all day and just like scribble notes and figure it out. You have to actually interact with people. And with that being said, peace out.
Bullshit. Yeah, look at my life, I wish they could study me. The word fan means looking familiar. Know what my own people done to me. Lie my name, put thoughts in my brain. They ain't really had no left for me. Tell the truth, now I wasn't ashamed, but I couldn't let them get under me. Fuck them, it don't get no better. I hold my grudges forever. Hatred so long you can measure. My blessings take longer than ever.